I'm Jon Sicotte, executive editor of the Brewer Magazine. Welcome to another edition of the Brewer Magazine podcast. Make sure that you're liking and subscribing on YouTube and Spotify to follow along as we try to get out every Tuesday morning. Hope all is going well with you. Well, I'm a Yooper. I'm from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan originally, and fall means to me, well, eating pasties and kudagi mostly, but it also means the transition from summer to winter, which means lots of bonfires, hot drinks, flannel, especially in the UP. I don't have my flannel on me, but it also means apple picking and pumpkin pies and pumpkin beer and pumpkin lattes. You know how that goes. The same all over the country. Well, for Indeed Brewing's pilot system, the Minneapolis brewery has at their Milwaukee location, it meant a change to try to see if they have a chance at some new innovations for a fall release this year. And now for the first time, we're digging into the brew review for the Apple Crisp Ale. Have you ever used cider yeast in a beer? Well, Indeed has, and shares that with the Brewer Magazine podcast. And we welcome in Ryan Bandy, the Chief Business Officer of Indeed Brewing. Good to see you. We haven't talked in a while, so
thanks. Good to see you.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and like we talked off camera, CBO is your new title.
Yep.
You've been with Indeed rising from the ranks over how many years now?
Man, a little over 11, or maybe it's September, October, 11 years. So yeah, right around 11 years. Started putting pack techs onto six packs back in the day when we were only canning once a week. And then, I've done taproom, packaging, bartending, and then sales for a long time. And that's kind of where I moved up a little bit, and then marketing, taproom director more, and then most recently stepped into this role last November. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And watching over the years that we've pretty much had kind of started around the same time with Brewer Magazine. And we've been in contact pretty much the whole time, and seeing you guys grow and watching this. I mean, it's a scary time right now. I'm sure you guys are,
of course,
finding that. But innovation is one of the things that craft beer is all about, and that's what we're talking about today. Is we got a press release about Apple Crisp, and first time you guys have canned this, but not the first time you guys have made it, right?
So we made it last year in Milwaukee. So this is Milwaukee, fully born and bred from Jenny, the head brewer down there. Badass. Shout out Jenny too. She just had her first child. I just met the little thing right now last weekend, and it was great. So it was her kind of idea to do. We were talking about fall seasonals, and obviously there's we've done a yam, we do a yam and jamma one. We do some other ones, and she was stoked about the idea of apples, and then they got to talking about it. And so we made it last year for the first time, and we're stoked on it. It was such a cool beer. And so then, this year we released it in cans. We sent it to GABF, so we have our fingers crossed on it in the specialty category because it's a very strange beer. But man, I love it. I think it's really, really cool. Super proud of it. Yeah.
Now, have you guys worked with apple type beers before? I mean, this isn't cider; it is under the, I'm assuming, 50%.
Just barely. So it's 40% of the fermentables are apple. So then the rest is malt. So it's still, I think we call it not quite a cider, not totally a beer, because it's technically a beer still, but we do use a ton of the fermentables are apple, and then we use a cider yeast. So we ferment it with a cider yeast. We add a tiny bit of the kind of fall spices, not much, but then we lager it. And I think that's the really interesting part to me. Yeah, let's have some.
Hold this up.
Yeah, so it's it's really, it doesn't ferment. We have to kind of get weird with it because the cider yeast isn't used to the malt sugars, and so it's kind of this weird combo. But and then we lager it, and so it's stays in a cold tank for a while, and so then it has this incredibly crisp, look how clear, it's like a lager beer.
But
look at, and then it dries out. I think it's 7 or 6, almost 7%.
7%. 11 IBUs. So
Yep.
apple, cinnamon, and like you said, I'm getting some warmness from the cinnamon.
Yeah, a little bit.
Not a dry cider, but it finishes crisp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like because it's still a beer. Like it's not all tart. There's tartness, but it's not all sharp. There's like that malt roundness, but it does dry, and we lagered it, so it dries out. I think it goes to like 1.8 or something, 1.9 Plato. And so we get it there, so it's like fully a dry beer, but a ton of apple, and then with the cider yeast, but then lagered. It's a total. I don't know if you can swear, but I was going to call it a total clusterfuck. But you can blot that out later. But as far as the beer, it's just like a mess in the best way possible, especially for us. Like we always kind of get weird with stuff, and so I think this one. But then at the end of the day, it's a very delicious, traditionally made, executed beer that is gorgeous, and like it kind of has both things. I think it's one of my like favorite things we've done in a while, I think.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's always fun because it almost seems like there's nothing new under the sun until someone discovers something. I mean, and
Totally.
then become a thing. So have you guys, I know of other breweries that have made apple ales. When you said cider yeast, I don't think I've ever seen someone do that.
Yeah, so we had one of the guys that worked here that was kind of our director of ops, who actually just went to Other Half. Also, shout out to Dayton Coffee. Really good dude. He abandoned us this year though, so he's dead to me now. But he said he's been in the industry for 25 years or 30 years across the world, and he was talking about like I don't know if I've heard of this, like the full thing, like apple, like that much apple, not just like a little bit, and then cider yeast, but then cold lager it for a while. He's like, I don't know if I've ever heard of anything like this. So now it kind of got me excited because he's worked at Kieran, he's worked at like the Lion, huge breweries, he's worked in New Holland. It's like one of those things. Like if that person hasn't heard of it, you're like, well, that's cool. And it is unique to me. It feels unique, but also just drinks like a beer in some ways. So it's like nostalgic, but also brand new at the same time, which I do think when you hit on cool stuff, I do think that's usually the two characteristics. When you do something cool, it's like it feels like I've had it before, but then I've definitely never had it before.
Yeah, and you don't get the cider tannic, like tartness. It very much finishes like a beer. It's, I'm like carbonation wise, it's great because it's very effervescent.
Yeah,
it does, and for the sweetness, which if it didn't have that carbonation, I think it would come off even more cloying because some of the sharp bubbles. Maybe you said it and I was drinking. Where did you guys come up with that cider yeast idea? And
I don't know.
What did you know it would do? Like you said, you're
and it didn't work. Like it stalled the last year. It might even stall a little bit this year. But like because the cider yeast, it obviously rips through all of the apple sugar because that's what it's used to. That's what it likes. That simple stuff. But then it hits some of the malts, and it gets to that next level, and it like kind of stalls out. And so that's what happened last year. They were trying it. And they were like, damn it. Like, we thought this was maybe going to work, but I don't think it's going to work. But then they like kind of added some enzymes. They like tried to get it going again. And then for some reason, it just like all of a sudden picked back up and finished, and actually finished dry. And then by that point, they had lagered it cold for a while. And so I don't remember where that idea came up. I feel like we were talking about different yeasts, for another beer. I don't think it was this one, but it was like talking about some other yeasts ideas. And then I think we were talking about wine yeasts for something, and if you could use it for some barrel aged beer or something. We were like messing around in our heads, but I remember it came up, but I don't remember where they like actually. I'd have to ask Jenny where they decided to actually do that. Because I do think it's a really cool component of this one.
Yeah. Well, let's touch on the aspect. This comes from the pilot system in Milwaukee originally. I'm assuming is this just made in Milwaukee and sent out, or are you guys doing? Okay, so you guys weren't doing it in Minneapolis. So it's a small
and we haven't small batch. This is 10 barrels of beer. Yep. Which is their system down there. And we haven't made it up yet. We canned this down there too. And we don't distribute the stuff we can down there because it's not a great can line, but we kind of do enough for every week or two. Yeah. But I mean, it's the whole point of like doing Milwaukee. We actually just celebrated our 5-year anniversary down there last weekend. And I was just kind of like waxing poetic internally to people, just like how far we've come there. But it was the whole point with the pilot system. It's a really nice system. It's like, it's small, but we have a centrifuge, we have nice bright tanks, we do everything really right. So we can see how these stuff can actually turn out, like on a professional scale, but at a small volume scale. And then with Jenny and Dana, our brewers down there, like everything is top notch. And so it really gives us, we would not be able to fuck around with 30 barrels of beer up here and like see if it will work. Like we can't really, like that's just like, we kind of have to know it's going to work if we do that in Minneapolis. And so it's really fun for us to be able to have that outlet and have it be internal, but also have it be different, which is really cool. It's a different group of people, different inspirations, different ideas, different city. So we're not like in our little, I don't know, sometimes craft breweries can get in their own little holes with like the places that are down the street from them, and so that's what it helps us kind of keep stuff green too in that way.
Very nice. Is it something that you're looking at, and obviously it comes down to sales and numbers, is this something just fun for you guys to do, or do you think if this hits, this is something that you would bring up to a larger system in Minneapolis? Like, do you
Definitely
have aspirations for it to do that, or is it kind of a wait and see right now?
I mean, it's always a wait and see a little bit, but I definitely have aspirations. I think it fits all of the marks for our brand. And we've had the same fall seasonal for a while, or like kind of more or less. And it's one of those seasons, especially in Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's like being from the UP, it's just like that magical season. Everyone loves fall. The weather's perfect. It turns like everything's nice. And everyone celebrates fall in the Midwest. It's like bonfires, and you go to apple orchards, and you go to pumpkin, like that's just what you do. And so I think for us, having something like this would be an awesome seasonal, and I could see it working because it's so different. Everyone starts to do malt, like in the fall, everyone goes dark into the browns, into the reds, or like obviously the pumpkins. And this is, it's like golden clear, but it drinks really nice, but it still has that fall kind of like energy. Yeah. So I could see it working. Like I think it's done really well down there so far, like in the tap room, but I could see it being a beer for us that would work. I do. Yeah. What do you think? Do you like it?
I like it. I think it's like you said, it's something different. I think having even just that apple aspect to it in the name, and the way you guys probably are marketing it, it brings in a different consumer. Mind you, this isn't gluten free, but right. It is an apple product that I think people that might think of, like, I don't like beer, but I like cider. Even if you can kind of be like, well, have you tried this yet? Because I know there's a brewery here in Northwest Ohio, Encore Brewing. They do a lot of apple-based beers like this. So that's really it really interested me. Huh. I don't think they're doing the cider yeast though, which is the interesting aspect.
Interesting.
It's fruit beer, but it's not an apple or it's an apple beer. Like they actually make that distinction. When you started formulating this, and obviously it's on a small scale, so you want to promote it out and get it out there. Is that what you're thinking? This is like one of the, it's not completely for the gluten-free type people, but it's definitely for the people that might not be beer drinkers per se.
Yeah. I think that's always like, you kind of think of ideas and then you put up the pros and cons and look at them. And I definitely think that was one of the pros on this pretty early. It was definitely not like it wasn't our intention. It's not where we started from. But once you kind of have that idea, you're like, actually, this is great. Like we need that as a brand. We always need to be, pushing towards the edges of our target market to make sure that we're trying to bring more people in. And this is definitely one of those that's like, you get people all the time that's like, oh, I don't really like beer. I like cider. I think this like fits that niche perfectly. And it's definitely less gluten, for the people that aren't, like, if they don't celiacs, if they just don't like gluten, or it doesn't like work with them well, this will definitely, be better than an average beer for that. But yeah, I mean, we're always trying to think of things to push the boundaries of what a brewery can do and who we can market our stuff to.
Looking at the can art itself, I'm not looking
Yep.
at myself, but talk a little bit about the thought process behind, you want to have it your brand, but you
Yep.
guys have a look, you guys have a style. Is this
Yep.
what Indeed, like an Indeed can, if it's stacked up against the rest of them, looks like it's part of a
different.
brand, or it's different?
It's different. I mean, it definitely. So our Milwaukee stuff, and we even put the little, like, we have a Milwaukee local craft beer kind of like signia back there, and that means it's been made in Milwaukee and canned in Milwaukee.
Gotcha.
Those cans definitely had, like, our we have creative director, and those always end up with a slightly different. They almost have their own brand of themselves now. Like, if you look at all of our Milwaukee made beers, they kind of have a similarity to them. It's definitely cleaner, bolder, like not as complex, maybe. Like, it's straightforward, is like, doesn't sound like a good term, but it means, like, to me, like, very quick read, like a very quick, like, what you're getting, what that tastes like immediately as I see this. And he's a master of color, so I think the colors are really cool. They're kind of the muted colors.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is similar to the Milwaukee made stuff, but it looks very different from a lot of our Minneapolis based stuff, which I think has always been our goal. We don't just want to replicate what we do here. That doesn't matter in Wisconsin. Like, ultimately, like, we're the way we are up here because of Northeast Minneapolis, because of when we open, all of that stuff. And Milwaukee is a different place entirely. So I think we really want to lean into that.
Yeah. How's Milwaukee gone at 5 years in? What are you thinking about them? How have they become their own piece
Yeah,
while also being a part of the whole overall company?
yeah. It was yeah. Last weekend I was down there hanging out, and it definitely was like one of those moments where you're just kind of thinking back. We self-distributed to Milwaukee for like a year. It was a crazy project. And it's really hard to open. It's 450 miles from Minneapolis, or whatever, 350, 400 miles. So it's not close. And so it was definitely hard. I mean, it still is. It can still be hard, right? Like, internally, we're not that big of a company. And so how do you bridge those gaps in communication and understanding and expectations as, like, from like a company or a business mindset? Um, it took us a little bit to get that going. It's the first time we had another place. So there was a lot of kind of like, it just felt like it really wasn't working well for a little bit, just as far as like internally. But now it's much better, and it's been fun to have that, like, kind of start to roll a little quicker. And then Jenny took over as head brewer, was it last summer? I think it was last summer. And so since then, I feel like, our beers. I mean, our beers have always been really good down there, but I think they've kind of taken another step, and it's so cool because I think when I was down there, 17 of the 20 beers on tap were developed and brewed in Milwaukee. So it's
Wow.
like its own place. Every time I go down there, there's like 7 or 8 beers that I'm like, what? I haven't had this yet. Like, they get all the cool shit now. Like, we have all the old normal beers up here, and they get all the cool things. And so that's part of, like, to me, an example and an extension of, like, they're becoming their own. They are their own place, and that was the whole point. Because that will only strengthen, like, us as a team if they can, like, truly be themselves and not have to feel like, whatever, the big sibling brewery, whatever, is telling them what to do. But in the
Right.
same sense, it is hard to, how do you make sure a can that's, like, supposed to look different than us still is Indeed, because that is, like, important. And so I think that is, like, a constant battle for us, to try to find that balance that I think is harder said than done.
Sure. Sure. How about looking at, if this is a success, like, how would this fit into your portfolio? Like you said, it could be
Yeah.
it could be a seasonal. Would it just be a limited release type thing? I'm sure there's a ton of thought process. And when does that thought process begin? Is it from the second that if you run out of it and you start thinking, should we have done more? Or that was a good
Right.
point. how do you determine what is a good point for this as you start planning for next fall?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so we have our plan for next year. We started that. I mean, like, we're tweaking like the edges, but we start that process. I mean, fuck, we'll start that process for 26 like in December or January. Because you want to have time to truly bench trial and truly brew new things, see if it works before you start to brand it. But then you have to get it to ABPs, which is now basically, right? Which is your meetings with your wholesalers, your yearly meetings. And so I think it starts usually with these types of beers, especially Milwaukee stuff. It starts with just like, damn, this tastes good. And then you like send it to people internally and you're like, this is good, right? Like, it's a different version of good. And if people are excited about it internally, to me, that's always been a really good indication of what we should be doing with this. And so this one is definitely seasonal, right? It has like, it's kind of squarely in the seasonal hole. And I see it being, I mean, I could see it being kind of limited, but I could also see it has wide appeal, I think. Sometimes limited beers, you're like, this is kind of weird. Like, there's going to be a few people that really love it, but like, I don't think that many people will like this. To me, this beer has kind of wide appeal. So I think it's seasonal, and I think there's no reason why, like, rural parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin aren't stoked about a beer like this, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it goes, especially if the awards come out this weekend, and you guys, that might change the trajectory a little bit too. So
yeah,
I'm wishing you the best of luck on that. And it sounds like
thank you.
Hopefully see you at CBC, Indianapolis.
Yeah, Indianapolis. That's right. I might even be speaking. I just heard, I don't know. I might be doing something out there. So, but I think either way, I'll probably pop down there for that. So we'll definitely have to catch up.
All right.
Down there.
Maybe we'll be having a few of these.
Love it. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right.
Don't forget, you can always check on brewermag.com. You can also see us on YouTube and listen to us on Spotify. And don't forget daily updates on Facebook, Instagram, and X. I'm Executive Editor Jon Sicotte for brewermagazine.com.